Okay, final check.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good
House
afternoon.
Vice, well done. I know it's been a busy
Good
day.
afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair, everybody.
Good afternoon. Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm having a little bit of technical challenge with the backdrop.
Oh,
It came to me as a surface mail, so we are finding it hard to save on my system. So that's the
Oh, well,
challenge
I
I'm
just
having
had
now.
the same issue. But
Good
I
afternoon,
sent it
ma.
also. Good afternoon, my brother. How are you?
Thank you, ma. Thank you very much, ma. Good afternoon. The registrar is also on this call, and the president
Okay.
is joining very shortly.
Right.
Dr. is on this call. Good afternoon,
Okay.
ma. MD. Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you
Good
again, ma.
afternoon, Mr. Marakin.
Thank you.
good afternoon, everyone.
The
Good
registrar is
afternoon,
here.
everybody.
Fantastic.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mailobu.
Registrar, see you.
Afternoon, madam. Afternoon, everyone.
Good
Madam
afternoon.
VP, how
Good
are you?
afternoon, everyone. Very well, thank you.
Good
Great.
afternoon,
Good to
Mr.
have you.
Malobu. How are you?
Good
I'm
afternoon,
good,
sir.
thank you.
Great.
Afternoon. Lamide, how are you?
Good. Good afternoon, everyone.
Wanda, when are you doing the countdown? Good afternoon, everyone.
Technical team, please help with the countdown so that we know how many seconds we have till we're live.
Can we just check that the chair of APWB now has her backdrop? Chair.
Mrs. Leah
Hello,
Ishola.
Mrs. Ladimeji. This is Lola speaking. I think also Abimbola's backdrop is different. Sorry, I'm being pedantic about the logo, but it's the wrong one.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay.
The logo is short form of city. So is that something you can quickly change? And if not, because it's 3:30 already, and I'm sure we'll have a few people. It's 3:31.
Let me see.
I can share that.
Should I forward it to you on WhatsApp?
Email is better, please. If anyone can forward to me on email, I'll try to just.
I will forward to
save
you
and change.
via email right now. So just do a quick refresh. Okay.
Wanda, can you please write in the chat box that we will start shortly?
So Abimbola, let me know when you get it.
Okay, I'm refreshing and waiting for it to come in.
Okay, Chair, do you have it now, the backdrop?
No, she doesn't.
Can someone help her, please?
We actually need the image. If someone can
Right.
forward or something.
Just
to also mention that Mr. President has joined live.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, sir. Mr. President.
This is amazing. You didn't send the background to me. You don't want me to look like you.
Well, I thought we sent it. Okay. We'll forward it.
Okay.
Because I think it even has, all our logos on it.
Yeah.
So I will forward it now.
So Abimbola, can you confirm that you have it now?
Attendees can hear us.
Okay, guys, I can hear you and I'm an attendee. So can you go live straight away?
Oh, gosh.
Let's go live. Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Association of Professional Women Bankers Leadership Series, themed Navigating New Terrain, with the topic Where Banking, Digitization, Passion, and ESG Meet. The APWB is the female wing of the prestigious CIBN, with a focus on empowering female bankers to rise above glass ceilings and drive revolutionary growth in Nigeria's economy. Please allow me to introduce our distinguished host, moderator, and discussant bar. With us today, we have Mrs. Ireti Samuel Ogbu, the MD CEO of Citibank Nigeria Limited. We have Mrs. Tinuke Leye Ishola, Chairperson APWB and Business Development Manager at Wema Bank PLC. We have Mrs. Funke Ladimeji, First Vice Chairman APWB and ED Coronation Merchant Bank. We have Mr. Bayo Olugbemi, President of the CIBN. We have Dr. Sheye Awojobi, Registrar and Chief Executive, CIBN. We have Mrs. Olamide Adeosun, the lead moderator for the event, and Group CFO at FBN Quest Merchant Bank Group. So this event will unfold as follows. We'll start with our event introduction, which will be delivered by Mrs. Leye Ishola, the chairperson of APWB. We'll have the opening remarks by Mr. Bayo Olugbemi, the president of CIBN. We'll then delve into the conversation proper with Mrs. Samuel Ogbu. This will be moderated by Mrs. Olamide Adeosun. We'll go then to the Q&A session, which will be led by my good self, Abimbola Ogundari. And then we'll have the closing remarks to be delivered by Dr. Sheye Awojobi, the Registrar and Chief Executive of CIBN, and the vote of thanks to be delivered by Mrs. Funke Ladimeji, the First Vice Chairman, APWB. A few housekeeping rules. We know that as the session progresses, you will have lots of questions, comments, contributions. We'd like you to please note these in the chat box so that when we get to the Q&A session, we'll be prepared to put in everybody's contributions and ask the key questions that are coming from the attendees. At this point, I'd like to move very quickly to the event introduction. I will ask Mrs. Leye Ishola, the chairperson of APWB, to please open the event with her introduction. Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Leye Ishola, we can come back to her. Mr. Bayo Olugbemi will help us with the opening remarks for the session. Mr. Olugbemi, are you here?
Actually, Abimbola, why don't we, while we wait for Mrs. Leye Ishola to reconnect, probably a technical challenge, can we take the anthem, the CIBN anthem, in the meantime, please?
Fantastic.
Competencies are gone, creating value and building capacity, fostering confidence in the industry.
Thank you very much for setting the tone with the anthem. Do we have Mrs. Leye Ishola, the chairperson, APWB, ready for the introduction to the event?
Okay, let me, probably technical challenges. So let me just, come up with the chair's speech. This is the speech from the chair of the Association of Professional Women Bankers of Nigeria. She says, good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you to this webinar organized by the Association of Women Bankers, APWB, in conjunction with EY, Ernst & Young. In the last 1 year, there have been significant change in our lives and how we do things. There are challenges to conquer and overcome. Our work life has taken a new turn, and the way we approach life has changed tremendously. Nevertheless, the change has created new opportunities to build and grow and has expanded our approach to life. To dive deeper into these changes, APWB, in partnership with EY, will be having a conversation today with a seasoned banker, an erudite scholar, a woman of substance, the MD of Citibank, Nigeria Limited. Please join me to welcome Mrs. Samuel Ogbu as we discuss navigating new terrain, where banking, digitization, passion, and ESG meet. This conversation promises to be a wonderful session, and I have no doubt you will enjoy every bit of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Funke Ladimeji. On behalf of the chairperson, APWB, Mrs. Leye Ishola. At this point, I'd like to invite Mr. Bayo Olugbemi to share the opening remarks for the session with us.
Thank you very much. Hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. The chairperson of APWB, Mrs. Leye Ishola, the vice chairperson, Mrs. Funke Ladimeji. I guess the registrar is in here, Dr. David Olusheye Aojabi. Ladies in the banking industry here present. Our guest of today, the Managing Director CEO of Citibank, Mrs. Ireti Ogu. I also guess there are some gentlemen here supporting us. Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to come out of my vacation to join you online this evening. I'm most delighted to be part of this conversation this beautiful afternoon. I commend the Association of Professional Women Bankers, APWB, for packaging this program in conjunction with Ernst & Young. Today, I join voices with Maya Angelou, who said, "The horizon leans forward, offering a space to place new steps of change." This wonderful initiative amplifies the fact that the change that we seek is here and that the future is very, very bright. I am particularly excited that the ladies are taking their rightful places, occupying prominent positions of authority where they can influence the society positively. Somebody said that if you want anything done very well, give it to a woman. I am happy to note that the banking industry in Nigeria have 8 female managing directors of banks at this moment, and one of them is Mrs. Retiogo Samuel Ogu, HCIB, MDC Yotide Bank Nigeria, who is our distinguished guest on this platform today. And I am also aware that there are many, many more others who are executive directors and in other executive capacities, as well as chairmen or chairpersons of banks. The theme of our conversation this evening is navigating new terrains, where banking, digitization, passion, and ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance meet. I believe that the Nigerian financial services industry has always demonstrated the urge and passion to satisfy and surpass the ever-changing expectation of the financial services consumers, a tendency that constantly places the banks on their toes to seek and deploy solutions that will help keep their businesses relevant in the marketplace. This, in turn, causes the industry players to seek innovative ways of doing business. And I can attest to the fact that before the pandemic and since the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic last year, a lot has been put in place in the banking industry to serve their clientele or their customers better, their customers and all stakeholders better. The evolution of financial technology, fintech, has become a major disruptor in the banking industry, causing banks to rethink their operating models and digital transformation strategies. Mindful of the rapid development in digital technologies, the banks have engaged the fintech in strategic collaborations in their efforts to transform traditional banks into digital banks. As we move deeper into the 21st century and post-pandemic, digital solutions are expected to further deepen access to financial services, especially in remote areas, whilst helping banks further execute their environmental, the social, and governance strategies. According to KPMG, post-COVID-19 investment in sustainability issues, such as eliminate change, such as climate change, low carbon emissions, as well as access to ESG funds and other green solutions, is viewed as the new reality. Given the impact of the global pandemic on the economy, banks are beginning to realize that more value should be given to sustainability issues and not only profit margins. I am absolutely convinced that digitization will assist banks as they navigate new terrains and explore the various opportunities offered by the force of change. On this note, distinguished audience, I welcome you all to this conversation and I look forward to an engaging session. Thank you all and God bless you. Good afternoon once again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bayo Olubemi, President CIBN. I think that was a very noteworthy and tailored, relevant opening remarks, given the times we find ourselves. Thank you very much. I'm moving very quickly to the conversation with Mrs. Samuel Ogu, the MD CEO of Citibank, and I now hand over to our able lead moderator, Mrs. Olamide Adeosun, Group CFO. Mrs. Adeosun, Group CFO of FBN Quest Group.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much, Abimbola, for the introduction. We've come to the time where we are waiting for. Very warm greetings to everyone that has joined in on what promises to be a very enlightening and engaging session with a great female leader of our time. Last year, we had similar engaging webinars with key speakers that include Mr. Abubakar Sulaiman, MD Sterling Bank, and Mrs. Aisha Ahmed, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And today's session promises to be just as informative. As Bimbola already said the housekeeping rules, I'll just reiterate them. All participants will be kept muted during the webinar. We would appreciate you dropping your questions in the chat box. They will be attended to during the webinar. We also encourage you to please share nuggets of insights learned from this session on your social media handles, tagging at APW and at EY. Thank you. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our special guest speaker, whom we are privileged to have with us today, a distinguished female banker with over 32 years of experience in the banking industry, covering several roles, including corporate finance, relationship management, sales, treasury, trade solutions, and the list goes on. She has worked across 2 continents in 3 countries with significant experience leading the payment, treasury, and trade solution business. She's a champion of diversity and inclusion, having co-founded 2 impactful mentorship initiatives within her organization. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the first female MD CEO of Citibank Nigeria Limited, Mrs. Ireti Samuel Ogbu. Good afternoon, Mrs. Samuel Ogbu.
Good afternoon, Olamide, and good afternoon to the association.
It is with great pleasure, Mrs. Samuel Ogbu, that we officially congratulate you on your appointment as the MD CEO of Citibank Nigeria Limited. We all wish you every success in this role. This afternoon, we have in our audience a significant number of emerging leaders in banking, millennial bankers, and others who are all eagerly waiting to garner nuggets from your rich and diverse experience in navigating new terrains, particularly in fintech and ESG. Mrs. Samuel Ogbu, I once again welcome you to a conversation with the Association of Professional Female Bankers.
Thank you.
Right, going straight into it. I recently stumbled across a piece you wrote some 8 years ago about leadership advice to your younger self, which in my mind is still pertinent in today's world. One of the things you said was, you prefer taking a more centered and holistic approach to becoming an effective leader. That is, being a successful leader for you translates not just to a work environment, but to life in itself. The 5th point on those 5 advice to your younger self that stood out to me was how to manage your time and energy. And you said, don't forget yourself. Find activities that refresh you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. You also said, build in thinking time to avoid burnout, which is something that resonates now, particularly in the aftermath of COVID. So, Mrs. Samuel Ogbu, as a banking executive, we can all well imagine that you have many competing passions. How do you effectively manage these passions, considering the many balls you have to juggle? Are you able to share any practical tips with us?
Well, thank you very much. And that's an interesting one that you start off with, and I think a good place to start. And actually, the principles you mentioned, which I said I would recommend to my younger self, I think are still very much at work in terms of how I try to organize my time and how I try and prioritize. And one of the things that I said there was, first of all, it's about the role you do and the job you do, and to make sure that whatever you do you're unleashing your passion, because if you do that, it means that the work itself doesn't feel that difficult, and you don't feel like you are needing to really, take time away from it that much, because it's an integral part of who you are. But, directly to answer your question, it's about making sure that you energize yourself. And it's simply spending time on things that give you energy, and walking away from or stepping away from the things that draw energy from you. And for me, I draw energy from people. I draw energy from my job, because from my career, because I've tried to do roles that unleash that passion and that interest. But I also try and find time for myself. And I've always enjoyed walking, and I kind of ramped that up to running a few years ago. I ran my first marathon over the age of 50 a few years back. I was very proud about that. But yes, so I try and bookend my day, morning or evening, either with exercise, either running or walking. And I also enjoy podcasts, which I tend to do in the later in the day.
Fantastic. I can't boast of a marathon myself, not even a half marathon. I think the most I've done is 10 kilometers, and everyone in my neighborhood heard the day I did the 10 kilometers. Thank you very much for those practical nuggets. The same time flies when you're having fun, and as you said, you draw energy from the things you enjoy, which includes your job as well. So it's coming up to a year that you effectively became the first woman, I'm going to stress that, to be at the helm of affairs at Citibank Nigeria. I must say, during unprecedented time brought about by COVID-19 pandemic, can you please share with us what it was like starting the new role at such a time, and if there are any key learnings from that experience?
Yes, certainly an unprecedented time for sure. And I think the last time we had a pandemic in the world was almost a century ago. So there was no template, no playbook, and you just had to figure it out as you went along. But I'd say three things I would say were learnings for me. And the first one is really about remote work. And I think traditionally, we've always thought of work as being a place. It's actually more of an attitude, because we all managed to work when everything shut down, and we managed to do that in a remote setting. So especially as we're thinking of how we empower women going forward and building in flexibility, I think that's an important thing to think about, that work, especially in banking, which is a regulated activity and one that we were very worried about taking home, that's something that you can do remotely. So first, learning. Second one is really about digitization, which is related to the first point. And the fact that you really can digitize the interfaces with your clients and digitize the work itself, which is why it's portable and you can actually do it from home or from wherever you are. And the third point is really around people. We're so used to connecting to people informally, physically, but it really makes the case for being deliberate about connecting with people, being intentional. And that's something that I've had to learn in the absence of physical meetings and just opportunistically bumping into people. How do you still remain, ensure that connection is there with your team?
Yes, I think we can all attest to those experiences. The people side of things seems to be where a lot of people felt that they struggled with, particularly at the start of the lockdown and the whole COVID thing. I think most people now, leading on to the digitization, have come beyond just adapting remote working and digitization to actually adopting it as a way of life. So like this conference now, life has gone on. We're having this conference virtually, and it's still just going to be as rich as if we were in person in a hall somewhere. So thank you so much for those nuggets. Just expanding a little bit on that question. you've enjoyed a lot of mobility in your career. You've worked in Nigeria, in SSA, in EMEA, and that rich and broad exposure, which the average Nigerian or the average banker doesn't have opportunity to gain that experience. You've talked about building flexibility into the work, how we do work now for bankers, females, etc. What can employers do to ensure that their staff, get those experiences and those exposure, even in the world that we live in as it is now?
Well, I would say there are a few ways you can do that. And I think if we've learned anything rather from COVID, it's the fact that you can do work wherever you are. So you should be able to increase your sphere of influence and the span of control you have and the work you do by still staying in Nigeria. And there are a number of Nigerian banks that have a footprint across Africa. And so it should be possible for there to be accelerated learning opportunities, either by expanding a role geographically, being responsible across different geographies, or taking on a high visibility project. It could be opening a new branch, it could be starting a new business line, it could be an evolution that's happening in the environment, open banking, digital currency, whatever. You can still get the kind of accelerated learning you get by moving country and moving job by doing those kind of high profile things. I think the other way of gaining exposure and experience is through short-term assignments, because you may not want to fully relocate, but there may be a case to go to a different country for a few months, or even rotate within the bank and do a different role within the bank for a while, and not stay in the same unit or department for your entire career, but move around and gain that exposure. So short-term assignment or on-the-job training. And the last thing that I would say is getting mentors, people who work with you in a very deliberate, proactive manner, who you can give feedback to, who you can talk to regularly, who you can solve work-related issues with, and situational analysis with as well, to help just improve that learning agility and to speed things up. Those would be the recommendations I would give.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. I've learned a new word today, your accelerated learning opportunities. And it's so true, because the world is now a global village. There's nothing wrong with, as you said, us having cross intercontinent, particularly a lot of banks that have footprints all over Africa or all over Europe, or wherever, and just actually transferring knowledge across borders, borderless learning, accelerated learning. Thank you so much for that. I just want to steer the conversation a little bit from the learning and exposure to about financial technology. I know it's a subject very close and dear to your heart. So we don't have a lot of women in banking, in financial technology. And your career has actually been quite unique as a female banker who has successfully combined finance, financial technology, the adoption of economic, social, and governance consideration, for short, ESG, and driving optimal business solutions. Lots of I've done a little bit of research on you. I know you did a lot of projects, particularly when in the UK, on open banking. And those are things that were successfully launched. Obviously you worked with a team in delivering all of those platforms and those products. What advice, first of all, what sparked your interest in financial technology? Because it's not something that an everyday woman would go into. And also, what advice would you give emerging leaders who are interested in pursuing, that line?
I think you just need to look around you to see that there's digital disruption everywhere, and the world is changing at quite a pace. And I observed that hotels were no longer bricks and mortar, but Airbnb. And also store faces, bricks and mortar were being replaced by platforms and by the likes of Alibaba and Amazon. And travel had been disrupted in terms of no longer travel agents, but you were dealing with names like Booking.com. And even in banking itself, you had the challenger banks in the UK, like Monzo, you have TravelWise that do the foreign currency. So my interest was really sparked by just the alertness or the noticing what was going on around me and seeing that the world was moving in a different way, and digitization was driving all of these changes that we see. So I think that was the first thing. The other point was that really digital disruption was just too big to ignore. You take an example like I mentioned, Alibaba, that does 4 times as much trade as Amazon, for example, just by virtue of how big China is. And they spun off their payments business, Alipay. That spin-off of an existing fintech ended up with a market capitalization which is more than many banks in the US. Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, even Citi. And we're talking about a market cap of $300 billion. So fintech is just too big to ignore because everything they do is at scale and really changes the paradigm in a very noticeable way. And I think the third reason that I got interested is that in my previous role, I was responsible for institutional payments for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And Citi is a 200-year-old bank, which means that we come with some legacy, right? And the best way to be able to deliver products quickly in the payment space across 55 countries was to collaborate. So I collaborated and worked with quite a few fintechs that helped us in terms of bringing solutions to the market.
Wow, fantastic. So if I bring that home to Nigeria, the Nigerian space, how, in your opinion, how can banks leverage fintechs, because we have a massive surge of them in Africa, particularly so in Nigeria, in developing a sustainable and inclusive banking system here in Nigeria?
And I think that's a great question. And this is one area where I think the central bank has done an excellent job in terms of the regulation they've put in place. So central bank has come up with the concept of payment service banks. And payment service banks are actually, fintechs, or in some cases, MNOs. And what the regulation says, the mobile payments framework guidelines that were issued just in July of 2021, is to come up with wallet savings, which really are targeted at the unbanked or the underbanked. But also, it's not just about what fintechs can do in this space. Banks also have been playing a role. And there's been the whole agency banking initiative, where over 800,000 agents have been created or acquired under the SANEF initiative across the length and breadth of Nigeria. So it's not just South-South, it's North-Central, it's Northwest, it's Northeast, it's everywhere that these 800,000 agent banks have been created. And these agent banks and these kind of, should I say, locations where the unbanked can actually do banking, with banking on your doorstep, if you like. Do everything from cashing in to cashing out, to paying bills, to selling airtime, a whole kind of range of activities, and even transfer of funds. So a drill down bank really at your doorstep. And I think that's been a great initiative to improve financial inclusion, because you have these bricks and mortar or these physical locations where you can do banking very close to where many of the underbanked and the unbanked are located. And to my mind, one final thing, which is an announcement that was made recently by the central bank, is the central bank digital currency, which is to go live in pilot form October 1. That, to my mind, is a fantastic way to both digitize and to reach the excluded. Because what they're doing is converting a percentage of money in circulation into digital naira, into e-naira. So it means that rather than using notes, you will have a wallet on your phone to be able to spend with. So that's a fantastic way. You don't need to have a bank account. All you need is, in the same way as you don't need to have a bank account if you have cash. All you need is a phone, and you are digitally enabled and you are banked, essentially, when the central bank digital currency goes live.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, you just said a lot of things there. One of the things that quickly came to mind was when you talked about the central bank initiatives on digital currency. Obviously, it's a fantastic idea. It's a different way of thinking of of what money is. I think when the whole cashless society about using POS and all of this came, initially it was all like, oh my God, but now it's a way of life. And I suspect that this would also be the near future way of life. Some of the African countries, Kenya, etc., have already gone ahead of us, and they've recorded some successes from there. So hopefully, the Nigerian banking system and the populace at large, we should also be able to, rather than reinvent the wheel, hopefully we'll be going in from a place of somewhat experience in that space. You also spoke about agency banking. This is a phenomenon now that is actually, kind of developed a life on its own. Particularly in the effort of bringing in inclusion and bringing in the unbanked, particularly in the most remote of places. That's another kudos to the development in that space. To the extent of the digital currency, do you think the Nigerian banks and the whole fintech and payment space are geared up for it? Because it's just around the corner. What's your view on that?
I think the central bank has a great working group and also has deployed banks to support as well. So they've asked for banks to provide nominations of people who will work with the working group. And it's going to start off as a pilot. So, and the examples of where this has worked is China and also, I believe, the Bahamas as well. And looking at those examples, and even, they don't have digital currency in India, but they've been able to digitize and take money out of circulation. I think that we are geared up because it's going to be in a pilot format. And we're in the world now of APIs, which is, connecting between banks and between the central bank and us using very automated and easy connection mechanisms. So I guess with everything, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. But I do think that given the fact that we're not the first, it's not first in the world, and there's the China model, which Nigeria seems to be following, because the digital money will be issued by the central bank into the banking system, and then banks then issue into individual wallets. I think there's a good chance of success, but I guess we'll see on October 1st whether the timelines have been too ambitious or whether they can be met.
Right, thank you. Just to ask you about another pet love of yours, which is around ESGs. Okay, so increasingly, this has now been viewed as a business imperative. It's no longer, an option. Investors are, taking a keener look on compliance before they, put their money to investments. How important should the consideration of ESG factors be for Nigerian banks in decision making of how and where to play?
I And I think it's very topical. It's a great question because, you know, we only heard recently that Shell was disinvesting from its onshore fields to be able to make an energy transition to cleaner forms of energy. So I do think that we need to think about the whole sustainability, and we need to think around those lines. But fortunately, as far back as 2012, the central bank, under their leadership, came up with sustainability principles, which really, when you bring together, you'll see has been guiding many things that have been imperatives in the banking industry. For example, in terms of our business activities and having an environmental and social impact in terms of how banks operate. And, you know, banks all have, you know, community development outreaches. Banks want to ensure that they are responsible citizens and they impact the communities in which they serve. A bank like Citi, for example, drives economic progress in terms of its mantra. So, you know, that's something that a lot of banks have taken on board. And last week, I think it was, the Bankers Committee announced that under the creative industries umbrella, we were revamping the National Theatre and its environs to create an ecosystem that impacts the youth for good and creates employment. That, to my mind, is the first sustainable principle that the banking industry has, no, that is, I should say, an exemplification, an example, a living example of that first sustainability principle, which the central bank has come up with, which is, you know, impact on the environment. The other one is around social footprint and being, looking at things like being energy efficient, and also looks at climate change and, you know, making sure that you use resources appropriately. And Nigeria is one of the first sub-Sahara countries that issued a domestic green bond. So it just shows that, you know, if you see these activities happening on a disparate level, you don't bring them under the umbrella of sustainability and the 9 principles that the central bank has spoken about. But, you know, many of these things, I think, are already happening, and the importance, I think, is underscored just in terms of the execution that you can see. Women's empowerment is one of the principles, and as the president said at the beginning of the CIB, president said, there are 8 women bank MDs, which I think, I don't know of anywhere in the world where something like 30% of the managing directors of the banking system are women. Financial inclusion is also an important sustainability principle, which we've already spoken about in terms of what the Nigerian banks are doing and what central bank is doing around inclusion. And one that I like very much that's not really spoken about is the collaboration and partnerships being important. And I think also the CIB president mentioned that in the beginning about how banks are collaborating with fintechs. And banks are collaborating with each other as well. The fact that we work together on various subcommittees in the Bankers Committee to come up with initiatives that are forces for good, whether it's BVN, financial inclusion, all of those things are spawned out of the Bankers Committee and the collective work that we do together. So I think it's imperative, ESG, and it has really impacted our decision-making in all the ways that I've given examples of thus far.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Mrs. Samuel Ogu. I have been told that there's so many people itching to ask questions and I should stop hugging the mic. I'm just going to leave with one final point. It's not a question to say, and you might choose to expatiate on it if you want to. And then I'll pass you over to Bimbola so that we can get into the juicy Q&A session. So this is one point I'd like to leave with the audience for them to ponder on. This is a statement you made a few years back on Women's Day. And I don't think at that time the talk of being MD CEO was even thought about or being talked about. I mean, I don't know, I assume it wasn't because it was a long time ago. And the statement you made, in my mind, actually summarizes your journey to the top very succinctly. And I want to say one or two things. Let me start with what you said. Open quote. I got here by not settling for comfortable, not giving up when the path was what got bumpy, but staying the course and challenging myself to fulfill my dreams. End of quote. I just thought that was amazing. Absolutely amazing. What went through your mind when you made that statement?
Well, thank you for that surprise quote. I wasn't expecting that. You've done a lot of very good research. I think what I was trying to talk about there were two things. One is resilience and how failure is not fatal, and how you can pick yourself up and keep going irrespective of what happens. And the second point I think I was making there was really around positive framing and turning constraints into opportunities and always finding a positive out of whatever difficulty you come across in your career. So, you know, those were the 2 points I think I was trying to convey, and I'm glad it resonated, or they resonated with you.
I did. Thank you so much for your time. This brings me to the end of my section. I'm going to hand over to Abimbola, who is going to anchor the question and answer part of the program. Abimbola, over to you.
Thank you so much, Olamide. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Mrs. Samuel Ogu, I think you've left the audience and all of us indeed with so many chunks of wisdom to internalize and digest from this conversation. You know, as we all strive for personal and professional excellence, it's really important that we're able to make the connections that help us along that journey. And I think that, you know, hearing from you is definitely a good push in that direction. So thank you. There were a few themes that stood out for me from that conversation, and I noted them. I noted them down. I think the first one was, you know, just the size of the large virtual economy and where banking is going, you know, the future of banking and the role that the leaders of today play in unfolding that narrative. I thought it was also great that you expounded on the intentionality that goes around connecting with our people to stimulate employee engagement, especially in these times when most of the connections are virtual and not physical as we're used to. And then embracing mobility opportunities, I think that stood out as well. You know, most people think of mobility opportunities as full chunks of time when they have to be away for a year, 2 years, and adjust to new climes. But I think it's important to also consider short-term opportunities, short-term assignments and exchanges. I thought that was very insightful. And then the ESG considerations and how we see that shaping banking products today. We have so many questions that have come through, and I can't wait to dive into them. But before we do, I'd like you to share something light with us, Mrs. Samuel Ogu. What's on your playlist? What are the 2 or 3 songs that you're currently vibing with at this time?
So I have very eclectic music tastes, and so I like gospel music, I like R&B, I like Nigerian music as well. So, you know, starting with gospel music, I'm a fan of Torren Wells and Hills and Valleys. It's a very uplifting song. And then to give you an example of the other kind of music I enjoy, I like Aloe Black as well, the man. And then, yes, and then I do like Burna Boy. I like either Jerusalem or Ginger. So great. They're all nice running songs or walking songs. So I have them on my walking playlist.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. So our audience has been abuzz with a number of questions for you. I'll start with the ones that have come through more strongly. The first one is really a number of attendees wanting to know about your ascent within your career. We've seen the rise of women towards a more gender balanced leadership over the past few years. And I think there are lots of wins to be proud of, including having someone like you spending the afternoon with us. And in taking advantage of that, a lot of people would like to know how you've handled the pressure in climbing through the ranks and breaking through the glass ceiling to get to where you are. Have there been times when you've had self-doubt, fears, and how did you push forward through those?
I think that's a difficult question to answer, because I have to tell you that I didn't start my career thinking I was going to one day become a bank MD. But I think what I've tried to do is always make sure that whatever role I did, I left a lasting legacy. And I didn't take a job just as an opportunity to be remunerated. I took it as an opportunity to leave something of value behind. So I would say that's kind of what has motivated my journey. To the question of self-doubt, of course, you always do, and you always feel that you lack certain things. But what I learned early on in my career is something that was said by a writer called Reshma Shujani, I think her name is, who talks about being brave but not perfect. And I think as soon as I came to terms with the fact that perfection isn't what is required, but the ability to have self-belief and to take risks, I think some of that kind of imposter syndrome or self-doubt was quickly kind of put on the back burner.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Samuel Ogu. So another question that a number of attendees want you, and I should very quickly say, I see a number of people with their hands raised. It would be nice if you would please put your questions forward, and we will attend to all the questions as much as possible. So a number of people have asked what challenges you've encountered within the technology space as you've moved forward in your career. So what key technology challenges were noted during the course of your career? And what advice would you give this generation of women that believe that digital and automation is not their thing?
I'll start from the final question, which is digital and automation. I don't think there's only one route to success. And I don't think you need to be somebody who enjoys or appreciates or works in technology to be successful. Far from it. I'm actually not very computer literate, believe it or not. I just understand what clients want, and I try and cut through the jargon and the technology points to try and describe to those who are techies exactly what I'm looking for. So I think we're all individuals, we're all born with our own particular talents and abilities. And it's about being your best self, the best version of yourself, not trying to replicate anybody else's career or to be anybody else. So I actually think it's possible for you to be successful in any part of the banking industry that you're in. And it's a question of being intentional and leaving an impact and being, having learning agility and learning as much as you can. So I don't think we're saying in any way, shape, or form that the only route to success is understanding, is being a digital native or being digital. But having said that, to the points I made earlier on, you're living in a world where all this digitization is happening, and there's such an advance that is happening, not just in banking, but in your lives. I mean, during lockdown, who was able to walk into a shop? But you went on Instagram, you went on Oya Now, you went on whatever app it was, and you engaged. So it's really a question of making sure that you keep abreast of what's going on, because even just as a person, you need to, right? Let alone being a banker. And really, the only way we can deliver value going forward as the banking industry is to automate and digitize and to standardize as much as possible. So even though you may not know the intricacies of bits and bytes, you need to understand what technology can do for you. You need to be able to come up with the use cases, and you need to have enough curiosity to do that, is what my advice would be.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Samuel Ubu. Another question from the audience is, why is ESG so important to banking? In your years, and given your passion, your interest, and your leadership position, what would you say is the real meat of that relevance for ESG in banking, particularly in the local environment?
Well, when you look at what ESG is all about, about economic development, about sustainability, about gender, you cannot, as what is probably the most successful, one of the most successful sectors in the Nigerian economy. Let's even just talk about it from a Nigerian perspective, not banking, global banking. You cannot just make all that profit, declare all those dividends, and not care about your environment and about the financially excluded and about women's representation and about improving the development of the country. To me, it's just good, it's just common sense and neighborliness to try and bring people along with you in your journey. If you want, I think it's a Chinese saying that says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go, if you want to go far, you bring people along with you. And to me, ESG is just common sense. Apart from the 17 UN sustainability principles or the 9 banking principles that central bank has, even if they didn't say any of those things, like you have to, part of what those principles are all about is about gender parity. It's about not discriminating against people. It's about making sure that you look after the less able, you look after your communities. Long answer I'm giving, but the short answer to all of this is that it just makes common sense to be your brother's keeper. That's what ESG is about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, ma'am. Another question from the audience. As a female leader who has led both men and women in the workplace across a span of over 3 decades, what are the 3 things you believe women should start and stop doing at middle management level to be seen as C-suite material? So along the growth journey, what do you think women should start doing and should stop doing in order to climb the ladder and accelerate within the leadership cadre?
Wow, that's a heavy question. I would say to start doing is self-belief, and a little bit of what I had said earlier, which is bravery. and not perfection, because by DNA, women, I suppose, tend to be perfectionists and want to be good at everything, be a great mother, wife, sister, professional, all those things. But, you know, you don't have to wait for perfection. And my experience was that I would wait till I felt 80 or 90% ready to do a job before I put my hand up for a promotion or before I challenged myself to apply for a bigger job. So I would say start believing in yourself and start and don't hold yourself back because you think that you may not be able to do a bigger role. In terms of stop, it's probably related to the first point, and I would probably say that you know you need to sort of build your toolkit and not expect and to think of promotions not just as vertical but as horizontal as well. So the fact that a promotion doesn't happen doesn't mean that growth has not occurred. So it's not just about, you know, going from, you know, AGM to GM to, you know, ED or anything like that. It's about seeking opportunities that extend and improve your toolkit, that you may not necessarily see that vertical growth, but you see horizontal growth in as well. And I would say don't allow people to pigeonhole you and to speak negative things to you and to box you into a particular role or level or anything like that. You know, so, and it's related to what I said about self-belief. You know, stop believing whatever narrative is out there about glass ceiling and about you can't and it's not possible and all of that. Stop believing in negative commentary and embrace the positive and what builds you up.
Wow, thank you very, very much. I think from that particular point, Mrs. Ogu, a lot of areas resonate with a number of people on the call, and even within the chat box as you were speaking and reaching in to give us some deep insights. A number of people on the chat box are echoing those nuggets that you have just shared. I think considering growth holistically, not just as vertical, but horizontal. There are times when you know that you've grown within a role, but the step movement along the ladder hasn't been reflected. So to take those as wins, even along the journey, and to put your hand up, I guess, to put your hand up at opportunities and figure it out as you go along. So thank you. There was a question around the increased pace of digitization and the fact that the infrastructure in Nigeria doesn't seem to be helping along those lines rather. What are your thoughts around our infrastructure deficit and the impact that it has on the pace of digitization that we're seeing within our global economy, and what that means ultimately for financial inclusion and other spheres of life?
I think we're said to have like a 20 billion infrastructure deficit or some large number like that in Nigeria. But I think the other side to that deficit is that, you know, as technology advances, you can leapfrog. So, you know, in the US, it was all about fixed line communication, which is why they had millions of phone lines. In Nigeria, before we had mobile, we had 400,000 fixed lines. So we've been able to leapfrog with the mobile phone, and 18, 19 million people have mobile phones. So I think, you know, as technology advances, we're able to find cheaper and more current substitutes for infrastructure and for connectivity. I'm not sure how much it has hampered us. Yes, we may not have, it may be difficult to then have online learning. It may be difficult in those kind of contexts, in a learning context where you need bandwidth and so on. But for banking, for example, rather than using smartphones, we have USSD, right? So they're alternatives. And I have to tell you that the real-time payments in Nigeria are ahead of the ones I saw in other countries, right? There are like 20 real-time payment capabilities around the world. And Nigeria was ahead of some of the countries. Europe is only just getting real-time payments, and Nigeria has had it for the last 8 years or more. So in some ways, I actually think, yes, we do have an infrastructure deficit, but I think of it in terms of roads and you know, schools and all of those things. But from a banking perspective, I'm not sure that it has hampered as much, is my humble opinion.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabo Obu. I mean, very relevant points. You know, we talk about the things that infrastructure hasn't allowed us to do, but we do forget that some innovation has come out of the lack or the deficit that we are seeing, and that innovation has really moved us forward, especially in financial inclusion over the past few years, and especially accelerated by COVID over the last year and a half. So there's another question on what are the top hard and soft skills that have kept you relevant in your current role? I guess hard skills in terms of what are the technical competencies that have helped you remain relevant, and in terms of the soft skills, you know, how have you embraced inclusion and participation within and outside of your team, and stayed relevant in that line?
I think an important skill, no matter where you are in the bank, is to have intellectual curiosity. Ask a lot of questions, understand how things work, challenge the status quo is something that I think has always helped me, which is why I've been able to work in many different parts of the bank without necessarily being a subject matter expert, but still succeed in leading those teams because I've asked the right questions. So it's not always about deep domain knowledge. It's about applying common sense oftentimes and using that to challenge the status quo. Because at the end of the day, your customer is a person. So, you know, it cannot be so hard that you can't decode it to something that can be easily explained and can be presented as a solution to the client. So yeah, so I think intellectual curiosity, learning agility, I think have been important. And then also the ability to, I think humility is very important. You know, and in humility, you seek for feedback, not because you're unsure of yourself, but that is, you know, iron sharpeneth iron. And by hearing from others, you become a bit more self-aware and you keep recalibrating and improving and hopefully getting better and better. I think in terms of soft skills as well, not taking things personally. being very open to feedback is part of that as well. And having an inclusive mindset, you know, and being meritocratic, you know, no favorites. It's all about output, delivery, meeting objectives, and, you know, making sure that their metrics and they are independent kind of means like that to align people.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm conscious of time. I think we'll be able to just squeeze in maybe 2 more questions, and then we'll move on to wrap up. So there's a question on how well-being has been impacted by digitization and remote working. I know that you've spoken to that in terms of being deliberate. Just in terms of being deliberate with connecting with your people over time. I wonder if there are any other nuggets in terms of, you know, making sure that as a leader, the well-being of your people is front and center of your agenda.
I think that's really important at this time. You know, we're not working from home. In many cases, we're living at work, you know, and you have to be able to put a line and draw a line between what is work and what is your life, because there's a lot of mental health issues and stress and just, you know, people just being overwhelmed by what's going on. So it's about making sure that people have those coping mechanisms where they're not required to, you know, continue to answer messages through the whole day and whole night. They have a natural cutoff where their, you know, their home lives begin. And it's about encouraging people to take exercise, get outdoors, have routines that that energize them, and bringing the day to a natural stop.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that that's really relevant as we go into the future of work that has caught up with us, the future of work that we have thought about, debated about for a number of years, and then COVID accelerated. I think that as we come out on the other side of this, there will be lessons that we need to take in terms of work-life integration. We've heard a number of people talk about work-life balance. I think we're moving towards the era of work-life integration. As we round up, Mrs. Samo Ogu, I think one last question, and also just any general thoughts and comments that you'd like to leave with us. When we see female leaders, successful female leaders, who have been able to garner all-round success, not just in the workplace, but in personal life, what I call personal and professional excellence. A number of people would like to know if there are any levers that you have had to pull to make sure that that success has been well-rounded, and you've come to a place where you're a balanced success, so to say. Is there anything you can share with us on that journey and in integrating work and life balance?
I get asked that question a lot of times, and I think of life as being, first of all, careers in decades, right? Even if you don't work for the same bank, we all work for decades, right? And even if you decide to do different things. So it's about not feeling the need to accelerate your career all the time, but making time for things that are important to you. Even though I moved around a lot, there were moves that were stalled or were elongated to take advantage, to make sure that my daughters, it didn't impact their schooling too much, because it gets to particular ages where moving really does impact exams and so on. So it's about trying to think long-term and to prioritize what's important to you along the way. I would say that I also did not sacrifice things that were important from a family perspective for me. And there were times where I took a few months off because it was important for either my husband or my children, for things that were happening in our lives at that point in time. And the same thing happens either in a week or in a day where I prioritize. And I just don't have an immediate family. I have an extended family as well, you know, a mother, siblings, and so on. I have responsibilities beyond my nuclear family. I've made sure that I don't compromise on those things, and I make time for all of those aspects of my life, because for me, they're all equally important, and they're what have contributed to the person that I am today. So, you know, my parting comments would be, don't try to be anyone else, because that's already taken. Be the best version of yourself, and also try and make sure that you find time to do the things that are important to you. Don't compromise on the things that are important to you. Your health, your family, you know, your relationship with God, and any of the other things that are important to you. You know, find time to integrate everything into your being, and try and balance everything out. And don't believe the negative things that are said about women or about you. Have a positive frame of reference, have self-belief, and be the best version of yourself.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Samuel Obu. To the attendees, thank you so much for your questions. I've had a fantastic time listening to the wealth of experience that Mrs. Samuel Obu has shared with us. Thank you very much for your time, Mrs. Samuel Obu. That's a gift that we recognize is worth its weight in gold. And we have quite a lot to internalize and digest from everything that you shared. We congratulate you again, and thank you very much. So at this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Sheye Awojobi, Registrar and Chief Executive of CIBN, to deliver the closing remarks for the session.
Thank you very much, Bimbola. Yourself and Olamide has actually taken us through a very fruitful journey that I'm sure Mrs. Samuel Ogu will forever be grateful for having you and Olamide. You've conducted a research. First, let me express appreciation to God Almighty for this. Navigating new terrains where banking, digitization, fashion, and ESG meet. Who else can tell us than the woman who has seen it all through exposure? And I like to start from what she has espoused to us as her hard and soft skills, which are the greatest of all the nuggets for me. Intellectual curiosity. Ask lots of questions. Challenging the status quo. Humility, and seek for feedback. Of course, be open to that feedback and always imbibe meritocracy and have an open mind. For all that she has told us this evening, with the caliber of people who have listened, we have close to about 250 people on this call. She has taken us through what I can call a real biography of a successful woman. She has taken us through what Nigeria banking is contributing. She has taken us through the challenges. She has taken us through the future of banking, which is digitization. And she has taken us through what any career banker would love to know, would love to hear. And of course, in terms of being very valuable to the community and the environment, she has also taken us through it. So I don't want to repeat verbatimly, but let me state clearly that for all that Mrs. Samuel Ogu has told us this evening, one fundamental factor is the fact that learning is a continuum. Learning must be of value. Learning must also impact. And of course, as a professional banker, one joy that we have today is that of all the 8 women leading those fantastic institutions called banks, which has actually, validated that we have the 30%. No other place across the world has it. All the 8 of them are members of the Institute. And I like to also state clearly that in terms of the energy that these women are putting into it, we can see that the future, and in line with all our SDG goals, the future of women really adding more value to the banking industry is brighter than it is today. On the digitization, in 2017, the Institute observed that the future of banking and the future of learning is actually through this means. And we have ensured that without even knowing that COVID will come, and what COVID has really put us into is actually to look at the role that we are playing and the job. And in her words, she has said, the role you and the job you do, unleashing your passion. She enjoys doing what she's doing. She enjoys her job, and she has really impacted by creating time for herself also on that job. Mrs. Ogu, we really want to thank you very much. You have also acknowledged the fact that Central Bank of Nigeria coming out with several policies, i.e. the PSBs, or the MNOs, the agency banking, the digital currency, which is actually, yes, not new across the world, but then Nigeria starting it. All these are real impactful policy initiatives. And of course, I like to also reiterate the fact that Nigeria is the first country to actually come up with sustainable banking policy in 2012. And the Institute today is also running, along with IFC, a sustainable banking certification, which means that we are not going to be left behind. For everybody that is here, please take that sustainable banking is actually a formidable principle that everybody must imbibe. How are we impacting the environment? In a nutshell, what women should stop doing and what they should start doing is another very powerful nugget. And I will start from this topic. See promotion not only as vertical, but horizontal. And of course, do not be pigeonholed by anybody. Finally, stop believing in the negative comments around you. A lot of things around this we can begin to espouse. But again, women have been advised that they should start by self-believing and be brave. Of course, do not always look for perfection in everything, but be brave and do not hold yourself back. without delivering another lecture, I think it is my singular honor representing on behalf of the Governing Council of the Chartered of Bankers of Nigeria, and on behalf of the President and Chairman of Council, and indeed on behalf of the Association of Professional Women Bankers, an arm of the Institute, which we are very proud of, taking us to greater heights with this. I want to say a very big thank you to you, Madam. And of course, join in congratulating you once again for taking the lead as Citibank. We know with your position, with your passion, and with your competence, the banking industry in Nigeria is going for greater heights. Once again, thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Awojobi. Thank you very much, sir, for the closing remarks. At this time, I'd like to invite Mrs. Funke Feishiton Ladimeji, the first Vice Chairperson, APWB, and ED Coronation Merchant Bank, to please deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Abimbola. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure today to say a few words of gratitude on behalf of CIBN, the Association of Women Bankers, as well as EY. But first is to thank our audience. In our fast-moving, commitment-loaded, time-poor professional lives of today, there's a continuous and an intense balancing act, trying to prioritize how we spend time. But despite that, you have chosen to spend the last 1 to 2 hours with us today. And we're most honored about that. I do hope you have found the conversation as insightful as I have done, as thought-provoking, and found some actionable points for your own journey. Thank you very much to our audience for joining us today. To our esteemed guest, Mrs. Samuel Ugbu, thank you for taking time out to share with us today. Our audience will agree with me that the conversation was packed with nuggets of experiences, packed with nuggets of even your perspectives, right? And this all serve as learning points to be leveraged by any professional, whether bankers, other professionals. We have a batch of other professionals who are not bankers on the line today, but helping in people's career journeys. And Ms. Samuel, you have also today contributed to, you have added a significant dimension, actually quite different, but a significant dimension to our association webinar series, which we started last year. This is a series that is a body of professional learnings. We started last year, as I said, and they're in the form of conversations with different speakers. A number of them have been mentioned. DG was mentioned, Mrs. Ronke Shumefun, the chairman of NDIC, was another. Major General Erabo, the Chief of Defense Staff of Nigeria, is another. Bismarck Ruwani, the MD CEO of Financial Derivatives, and many more. So your conversation today with us is a most fitting sequel. And so I say thank you very much for that. And I also want to say a heartfelt thank you, Mrs. Ogbu, to your staff who have worked very hard to make sure your schedule accommodated this event. To Lola Oyeka and her team, I say thank you and very well done. And to our moderator and co-moderator, stroke anchor, Mrs. Olamide Adeosun, as well as Mrs. Abimbola Ugundare. You made the entire event look so effortless. You made it enjoyable and inspiring. Ladies, you did a great job and I thank you. And we have a subcommittee within the Association of Women Bankers. This subcommittee is membered by millennials, young and emerging banking leaders who have led a range of initiatives across the association. Initiatives that include this event, initiatives that include just discussing, right, the topic of women in banking. In fact, there was a recent article in Business Day from this crop of our association members, reaching collaboration and partnership with different institutions. And this event today was indeed their own idea. They organized it, they executed it, this group of young bankers. And the team was led by Peju Shonusi and her working group, including names like Neora, Nwosu, Nena, Ngozi Okechukwu, Lara Ibirogba, Aisat, Olanrewaju, Olayemi Oyoita. Thank you, ladies, for your labor of love on behalf of your association. The impact of your effort goes well beyond your imagination. You are indeed role models, and we are very proud of you. And now to our partners. This is an event that is the result of a partnership that we started last year between the Association of Women Bankers as well as EY. It is a partnership that leaves no doubt, indeed reinforces EY's credentials as a diversity employer, but more so, not just diversity at EY, but partnering with your clients, EY, to drive diversity across sectors. Thank you for your part in this event, and I look forward to a continuation of our mutually beneficial relationship. Finally, let me come back home to CIBN, to the president, to the registrar, to the governing council of CIBN, the director, Mr. Akimuraki needs to be mentioned, the CIBN IT department, all of whom have played a key role in this event. And very importantly, to my colleagues on the APWB Association Exco for your exemplary leadership and for continuing to support the association. I thank you. My warmest appreciation for your unwavering support. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would also say one more point. Our chair in her speech was quite modest, right? Indeed, there are many great things that have happened in the past year under her chairmanship. It has been a wonderful year, and we have had increased number of youngsters as members within the association, significantly more so. The organization has been reinvigorated, and the chair of the Association of Women Bankers deserves thanks for her major contribution to all of this. And so finally, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, and I must say next time because there is indeed a next time, there's a lot more to come, and please watch this space. And so until next time, thank you for joining us today and for all your efforts on our behalf. God bless you and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you very much, madam. Would like to freeze this moment if you don't mind. So we'd like people to switch on their cameras so we can keep this event for memorabilia. We know the conversation continues after this. Thank you, ma'am. Please switch on your camera, and studio would like to freeze this moment. Thank you very much. The conversation continues on APWB website and CIBN website. Thank you. God bless you. And all our social media handles, we thank you all for joining. Thank you one. Thank you all. Thank you and God bless. We thank Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day.